So it's that time of the year again, and I know you guys are looking for the perfect Valentine's meal to impress your boo with. Don't worry, I got you guys covered with 3 of my favorite tried and true recipes. I'm going to show you guys how to make these fully loaded seafood twice baked potatoes. Then I'm going to show you guys how to make these quick and easy garlic butter steak bites that take less than 20 minutes. And of course, we're going to top it off with one of my favorite dishes. Now, whether you want to call it a Marry Me stuffed salmon or a Tuscan stuffed salmon, it really don't matter. Either way, this creamy spinach and cheese stuffed salmon will surely impress anybody that you serve it to. Now let's get started. So for this recipe, you'll need 2 salmon fillets. Make sure they're nice and thick and good for stuffing. 1 teaspoon of Creole seasoning, a teaspoon of lemon pepper seasoning, a teaspoon of paprika, and a teaspoon of garlic powder. And you're going to be using this to season up your salmon. 1 cup of chopped spinach, 6 ounces of the chive and onion flavored cream cheese spread. And make sure you get this flavor, it makes a big difference. A 1/2 cup of grape tomatoes. You can also substitute it for sun-dried tomatoes. However, I prefer the grape tomatoes. It's a little bit sweeter. 1/3 cup of red bell peppers, a 1/2 cup of diced onions, a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, a teaspoon of Lorry seasoning, and a teaspoon of black pepper. Alright, so first things first, let's start off by making the filling. You're going to go ahead and grab a skillet, add a generous amount of olive oil, and you're going to add in your onions, bell peppers, and tomatoes. You're going to season that up with some Larry's seasoning salt and some black pepper. And then you're going to go ahead and give that a good stir and let that cook until the onions are nice and translucent. Once your veggies have softened, then you can go ahead and add in your chopped spinach, and you're just going to let that cook until the spinach is nice and wilted, which should only take you about 2 minutes. Once it looks like this, you're going to go ahead and remove it from the heat, let that cool off, and then you're going to go ahead and add that into a large bowl along with your onions and chives cream cheese. After you have adding that in, you're going to go ahead and add in some Italian seasoning as well as some garlic powder. I'm going to give that a good mix until that is well combined, and then you can add in 1/2 cup of mozzarella cheese, and then you're going to stir that in as well. Once it's all mixed together and it looks like this, you're going to go ahead and place this in your refrigerator so it can firm up nicely. That way it can be easier for us to stuff our salmon. You're going to slide your knife through the center and carefully go back and forth, making sure you do not cut completely through your salmon. You're not trying to cut the salmon in half. You're just trying to cut a little pocket in there. So once you have your pocket, you're going to go ahead and open that up. And once you open it up, you're going to see there's still going to be some pieces that you have to cut. So you're just going to go ahead and do that carefully. And once we're all done, we can go ahead and get started with the seasoning that we're going to be using for the salmon. So the seasonings that I'm going to be using for the salmon, even though I already told you guys earlier, I'm just going to tell you guys again. So I'm going to be using Creole seasoning, lemon pepper, paprika, and garlic powder. So you're going to go ahead and mix that together until that is well combined and it looks exactly like this. Then you add a generous amount of olive oil on your 2 salmon fillets. Make sure you rub that in well. Make sure you get in between those slits as well because we are going to be seasoning the inside. And the olive oil just helps those seasonings better stick to the salmon. So now that I'm done adding the olive oil, I can go ahead and season it up with the seasonings that we just mixed up earlier. So you're going to go ahead and make sure you season front and back and make sure you get inside those pockets as well. Okay, so now that we got that all seasoned up, it's time to stuff our salmon. So you want to be gentle when you stuff these. Make sure you don't overstuff it, but you want to make sure you add a good amount in there. And again, the longer you refrigerate it, the better. That way it'll be easier for you to stuff it inside the salmon. As you can see, I'm struggling a little bit. That's why it's best if the mixture firms up first. Next, add a generous amount of olive oil in your cast iron skillet and let that heat up over medium heat. Once that gets nice and hot, you're going to go ahead and add in your salmon and make sure you add them in skin side down. And let your salmons cook for about 5 minutes per side, but keep in mind if you do have a thicker cut of a salmon or your salmon is thinner, the cooking times do vary. But to be safe, just make sure your salmon reaches an internal temperature of 145 degrees. Once it's nice and seared on one side, you're going to go ahead and flip that over so you can sear the other side. But be careful when you do flip them over that all of the filling does not fall out. So just be gentle. Next, I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of butter and about a teaspoon of Italian seasoning. If you want to use fresh herbs like fresh thyme and rosemary, you can do that. I'm just using this because this is what I had on hand. Once the butter has melted, you're going to go ahead and baste your salmon. And this is just going to add some additional flavor. That's going to give it that extra oomph that you want, okay? So make sure you do not skip this step. Once you're all done, you're going to have these juicy, delicious Tuscan stuffed salmons. And my, oh my, when I tell you, this was so good. Now let's go ahead and get this plated. As you can see, the salmon is super moist and juicy and flavorful. And when you cut into it, just look at how flaky that is. Definitely a 10 out of 10 and will impress anybody that you serve this to. Now let's move on to one of my favorite quick and easy Valentine's Day recipes. You cannot go wrong with steak. So let's get into these quick and easy garlic butter steak bites. For this recipe, I'm going to be using 2 New York strip steaks. However, you can use any cut of meat like ribeye, sirloin, anything that's not too tough. Just make sure it's boneless. You'll also need 4 tablespoons of butter, 4 cloves of garlic, make sure they're crushed, fresh thymes, and fresh parsley. You're going to be using this to make the garlic butter sauce. Season up the steak, I'm going to be using a marinade. The marinade consists of 1 teaspoon of Lawry's, 2 teaspoons of onion powder, 2 teaspoons of garlic powder, a teaspoon of complete seasoning, and a half a teaspoon of crushed red pepper, along with 2 tablespoons of soy sauce and 2 tablespoons of W sauce. So to start off, you're going to make sure your steaks are nice and clean. Go ahead and pat that off so there's no excess water. And then we're going to go ahead and cut these steaks up into little pieces. You're going to start off by cutting them horizontally. And then, of course, I'm going to go ahead and cut them vertically, making sure we get those nice little bite-sized pieces. When you cut your steak, try to cut against the grain and not with it. That way your steak can be nice and tender. Once you're all done cutting up your steak into little bite-sized pieces, we're going to go ahead and transfer it over into a large bowl. Once you have it all transferred, we're going to go ahead and add everything into the bowl, including the seasonings. This is just a mixture of garlic powder, onion powder, Lawry's, complete seasoning, and crushed red pepper. So go ahead and add that onto your steak. I know this might look like a lot of seasoning, but it's not, because most of these seasonings do not contain salt. Now you're going to go ahead and add in the soy sauce and the Worcestershire sauce. And then you're going to go in with clean hands or gloves, totally up to you. You just want to make sure this is very well marinated. And you're going to let this marinate for at least 30 minutes, but it would be best if you do this overnight. Next, you're going to make sure your cast iron skillet is piping hot, so you want to make sure your skillet is on a medium to high heat. Then you're going to add in the steak bites, but make sure you do not overcrowd your pan. Okay, you want to make sure you get a good sear on these steak bites. You need to cook these in batches. Do so. I ended up cooking mine in 3 batches. Now, if you like your steak medium like I do, you're going to cook yours a minute per side. If you like your steak medium well to well done, you're going to cook it for about 2 to 3 minutes per side. Just keep in mind, the longer you cook it, the drier it's going to be. Unless you like it like that, then that's your preference. Now, once you got a good sear on both sides and your steaks are cooked to your liking, you're going to go ahead and remove it from the pan. And like I did mention earlier, I did end up doing these in 3 batches. Like we said, 1 minute per side if you like medium, 2 to 3 minutes per side if you want medium well to well done. Don't overcrowd your pan and just keep cooking them in batches until they're all done. Alright, so now that my steaks are all done, I got a good sear on both sides, it's time to get started on that garlic butter sauce. First things first, we're going to remove the steak. Do not wash the pan. We want to keep in all that good flavor, and you're going to add in your butter. Once that butter gets nice and melted, add in your steak and make sure you turn off your heat, okay? So the cast iron skillet holds a lot of heat on its own. You don't really need the heat on in order for the garlic butter to cook. You don't want to overcook your steak, so make sure you turn that heat off. Now you can add in your thyme and your garlic. Before you add in the garlic, you're going to make sure you crush it first, and then you're going to stir that all together and let the residual heat cook it for about a minute or 2. Just trying to make sure that garlic is not raw. When you're all done, you're going to have these quick and easy, delicious garlic steak bites that took less than 30 minutes to make. Yes, I know, besides the marination, which probably is going to take you about 30 minutes. Besides that, it's a quick little meal. So let's go ahead and get this all plated up. Of course, you can't forget to add that excess garlic butter sauce on top. And of course, you know I gotta be extra and add some parsley on top. There you have it, my quick and easy garlic butter steak bites that take you less than 30 minutes to make. Super quick, super easy, and I promise you, whoever you serve this to will definitely enjoy this dish. Great thing about this dish is it does not require much effort. Now let's get into one of my last but favorite dishes. You know I had to save the best for last, which is these fully loaded seafood baked potatoes. For this recipe, you'll need 2 large russet potatoes, a half a stick of butter, 1/4 cup of shredded cheddar cheese, 2 slices of applewood smoked bacon. To season up our russet potatoes, you'll need a teaspoon of garlic salt, a teaspoon of black pepper, and 2 teaspoons of chives. I'm also going to be using a pound of shrimp, and of course you want to make sure you wash, peel, and devein those first. To season up my shrimp, I'm going to be using 1 teaspoon of Old Bay seasoning and a teaspoon of lemon juice. And for the Cajun cream sauce, you'll need a cup of heavy cream, a half a cup of Parmesan cheese, and a 1/4 cup of clam juice, along with 2 teaspoons of Cajun seasoning, 2 cloves of garlic, make sure you chop those up nice and fine, and a couple sprigs of fresh thyme. So I'm going to start off with my 2 russet potatoes. I'm going to go ahead and wash those off nicely, pat those dry, and get those all oiled up with some olive oil and a generous amount of salt. Make sure I really rub that in, and don't worry guys, it is not going to make the potatoes salty. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab some foil and make sure I wrap that up really tightly. If you need to double wrap this, you can. You just want to make sure none of this leaks out in the oven. You want to make sure you poke some holes in there first with a fork. I totally forgot, and we're going to cook this on 450 for an hour. So now that that is in the oven cooking, we can get started on preparing our shrimp. And what I like to do is add about a teaspoon of lemon juice to my shrimp, just to, get rid of any raw flavors. And then I season it up with a teaspoon of Old Bay seasoning. You're going to mix that up so it's nice and marinated. And then once that is, you're going to go ahead and set that aside so we can get started on our bacon. So what I like to do for my bacon is I like to add the bacon in the pan before it even gets hot, and I cook it on medium heat. And I don't add any oil because the bacon already makes enough oil and fat. You don't need to add anything. Once it's nice and crispy but not burnt, I'm going to go ahead and remove it from the pan, set that aside, and add the shrimp directly into there. Do not wash your pan. You want to cook that shrimp in the bacon fat. As we all know, shrimp does not take long to cook, so 2 minutes per side, especially because these are small. One thing I can't stand is rubbery shrimp. So when you're doing this step, you want to move fast. Now once your shrimp is all done, you're going to go ahead and remove them from the pan and set that aside so you can get started on your Cajun cream sauce. So to start off, you're just going to need to melt a tablespoon of butter. Then you're going to add in your 2 cloves of garlic. Let that cook for just a minute. Be careful not to overcook that garlic because it will turn brown, and once it's brown, it's bitter, and you don't want that. Now you're going to add in your 2 sprigs of thyme, and you're just going to let those flavors marry into each other. So you want that thyme to become nice and fragrant. It's going to add some nice flavor to this Cajun cream sauce. Now you're going to add a cup of heavy cream. Stir that all together. Once that thickens, that shouldn't take long, you're going to add in a 1/4 cup of clam juice and your 2 teaspoons of Cajun seasoning. At this point, you can go ahead and taste it, see if you need to add some more seasonings, but most likely you will not need to. Now, once that sauce starts to thicken up a little bit, you're going to go ahead and turn off that heat, and then you're going to add in your Parmesan cheese. You're doing this so you do not burn your cheese. Instead, you're going to let the residual heat melt the cheese. So now you're going to go ahead and add back in that shrimp that we just cooked, and you're just going to go ahead and stir that all together until that's well combined, and then you're going to set that aside because now you have your shrimp and Cajun cream sauce. So now that it's been an hour and our potatoes are done, let's go ahead and take them out the oven. Just be careful because they are very hot. Don't be like me, at least wait about 10 minutes. Potatoes should be nice and soft. So the first thing you're going to do is cut them down the center, but make sure you don't cut all the way through. You just want to cut it enough so that way you can open it up and it'll spread just like a book. So since we're making twice baked potatoes, what you're going to do now is just take out the inside filling. But when you take out the inside filling, you want to be careful that you do not go too close to that skin, because if you do, that potato will not hold its shape and it will fall apart in that oven. And I know you guys do not want that. So you're going to go ahead and take that leftover filling and you're just going to go ahead and add that into a large bowl. So try to leave a little bit of cushion in your potato so it can stand up just like you see right here. So now let's move on to making our potato filling. So first thing you're going to do is just get you a potato masher and go ahead and mash up your potatoes. If you don't have a potato masher, don't worry, you can just use a fork. That is fine. Now you're going to add in a half a stick of butter, a teaspoon of garlic, salt, and black pepper, and 2 teaspoons of chives. Then you're going to go in with 1/4 cup of heavy cream. You can add more or less depending on how chunky you like your potatoes. And then you're going to add in a 1/4 cup of cheddar cheese. Then you're going to add half of the bacon bits that we made earlier. Make sure you reserve half so you can use it for the top. Then you're going to go ahead and stir that all together until that is well combined. And once that is, you're going to go ahead and stuff your potatoes. And you're going to make sure you really pack that in. All right, so now that we got that filling all packed in, it's just all about building that loaded potato. So I'm going to start off by adding a layer of cheddar cheese. Then I'm going to add a very generous amount of shrimp with a Cajun cream sauce. And do not be skimpy, guys. Then I'm going to add another layer of shredded cheese. And then I'm going to top it off with some more of that cream sauce. Next, you're going to add the remainder of those bacon bits on top. Not only is it going to add an extra layer of crunch, of course, it's going to add some more flavor. And then I'm going to finish it off with some chives. If you don't have chives, you can use scallions instead. And now all that's left to do is just pop this in the oven on 350 degrees for about 5 to 10 minutes, just so it could get nice and toasty. And when you're all done, you're going to have these creamy, fully loaded seafood baked potatoes. Let me know which recipe you guys like the best, and let me know which recipe you guys are going to make for Valentine's Day. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.